Tonight, Republican presidential nominee Donald J. Trump joins me in an exclusive interview, speaking out on religious liberty, his controversial comments about women, his favorite saints, and more. Later, Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, joins us for analysis of the election and the Trump interview. Finally, the anticipated liberation of Mosul from ISIS has raised new hopes and fears among the Iraqi people, especially Christians there. Father Benedict Kiely, founder of Nazarene.org, joins us to discuss The World Over Live. Begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Donald Trump, Matt Schlapp, and Father Benedict Kiely are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, or if you have a question, I'll be live tweeting throughout. You can find me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. Less than 2 weeks to go till Election Day here in the United States, and the race for president appears to be tightening across the map. The latest polls indicate that Republican candidate Donald Trump has gained in the swing states of Florida, Ohio, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Iowa, while the Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton is closing in on Trump in traditionally red states, including Arizona, Utah, and maybe even Texas. The average of national polls show Trump narrowing his deficit against Clinton to 5 percentage points. On the trail, Trump spent all of Thursday in Ohio after stops in Florida, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Clinton spent Thursday in Iowa after stopping in Florida and New Hampshire as well. More with Donald Trump in our next segment. And new WikiLeaks email exchanges from Hillary Clinton's top operatives suggest that President Barack Obama might have lied about whether he knew of Clinton's private email server. In one email, a top aide to Hillary Clinton, Cheryl Mills, was concerned about the president's public statements that he first learned about Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server through news reports, a claim he made repeatedly. Mills wrote in 2015, "We need to clean this up since Obama has, quote, emails from her," end quote. White House spokesman Josh Earnest said Tuesday that Obama exchanged emails with his then Secretary of State, but the president had no knowledge of where Clinton's server was located. New troubles for Obamacare as the administration confirms that patient premiums under the government health care exchanges will increase sharply, by double digits for most. Before taxpayer-provided subsidies, premiums for a mid-level plan will increase an average of 25% across the 39 states served, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. Arizona will see a 100% increase, other states 50% or more. 1 in 5 consumers will have just one insurer plan to choose from, after major carriers such as United Health Group, Humana, and Aetna scaled back their roles. The president described the problems as just growing pains. Donald Trump was quick to pounce on the news, telling supporters that his first presidential act would be to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Clinton defended the Obamacare law, but conceded it needs to be fixed. And the battle for Mosul continues as U.S.-backed Iraqi and Kurdish forces have edged closer to the outskirts of the ISIS-held city. Approximately 330 square miles of territory have been recaptured from the Islamic State around Mosul. UN human rights staffers are receiving reports of atrocities being committed by ISIS against Iraqi civilians, including summary executions of women and children. More than 200 bodies have been found in villages surrounding the city. Thousands more have fled their homes. On Sunday, Pope Francis denounced the latest Islamic State violence. He said, "In these dramatic hours, our souls are shaken by the brutal acts that are being committed for too long against innocent citizens, whether Muslim or Christian. And the jihadi violence continues in Pakistan. On Monday, militants wearing suicide vests stormed a police academy in the dead of night, killing 61 people and wounding 100 more. The siege and ensuing gun battle in the city of Quetta lasted 4 hours. Most of those killed were police cadets and recruits. It was one of the deadliest attacks on Pakistan's security forces in recent years. ISIS released a claim of responsibility for the attack, as has a lesser-known al-Qaeda-linked group in Pakistan. Meanwhile, back here in the U.S., law enforcement officials have dropped one of its counterterrorism programs under pressure from civil rights groups. The FBI-led program sought to create counseling teams that would interface with young people who show signs of radical Islamic ideology and influence. The teams, called Shared Responsibility Committees, would have included mental health workers, counselors, and clergy who would meet with individuals who show signs of radicalization and get them help or involve law enforcement when necessary. Civil rights groups claimed that the effort would erode trust in community leaders and single out Muslims as a group to be watched. Another cross-border liturgy was held this week in an effort to bring attention to the plight of migrants and refugees. Straddling the border between Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Mexico, the Mass was celebrated by the papal representative to the United States, Archbishop Christopher Pierre. About 250 people showed up for the liturgy on the U.S. side. It's not clear how many people attended on the Mexico side of the border. Concelebrant of the Mass, Archbishop Gerald Kikanas of Tucson, said the liturgy focused on immigration because it's an issue very important to the Holy Father. The Mass was the third on the Arizona-Mexico border this year. And in a related note, CBS News and the Associated Press are reporting that migrants are surging into the U.S. illegally ahead of the presidential election. According to a border agent interviewed by CBS, smugglers are telling migrants to hasten their trip across the border because of the pending election. If Clinton is elected, they're being told there will be some sort of amnesty, and the sooner you get into the U.S., the better. The migrants are being advised that if Trump is elected, nobody will ever get in again. Officials at the McAllen, Texas stretch of the border said patrols have intercepted nearly 1,000 migrants in just a few days. Many are crossing and turning themselves in to beat what they perceive as an amnesty deadline. Britain's Parliament is moving a step closer to outlawing abortions for disabled children. House of Lords member Kevin Shinkwin, who has introduced the measure, called the current law discriminatory. Shinkwin is himself disabled. He noted it's illegal for an unborn human being to have their life ended by abortion beyond 24 weeks, but if they have a disability, their life can be ended right up to birth. On Friday, the House of Lords allowed Lord Shinkwin's bill to proceed to a committee of the whole House, bringing it one step closer to law. And the Vatican has affirmed the Church's strong preference for burial of the dead and not cremation. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in Rome this week published a new instruction on the burial of the dead and on the conservation of the ashes in cases of cremation. The instruction emphasizes the Church's doctrinal and pastoral reasons for the preference for burying the dead. It further sets out the norms pertaining to the conservation of ashes. The new document insists that ashes should not be kept in private homes and that the scattering of ashes on land or at sea is not permitted. Prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Cardinal Gerhard Müller, did say the Church wholeheartedly recommends continuing the pious practice of burying the dead, as it is considered one of the corporal works of mercy, more clearly expressing hope in the resurrection when the person's body and soul will be reunited. When we return, my exclusive interview with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. This is one you don't want to miss. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. He has inflamed emotion on both sides of the aisle since he announced his candidacy for president. Tonight, a more subdued Donald Trump discusses some of the issues and controversies surrounding his candidacy. He discusses religious liberty, explains his change of heart on abortion, women's concerns about him, and we even got to settle a simmering controversy once and for all. Here's my exclusive interview recorded at the Trump National Doral in Miami with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
I want to start with your mother, Mary Trump, who we hear very little about. But you said she had a flair for the dramatic. What do you see in yourself that you saw in her?
Maybe that. She was a terrific woman, beautiful woman. She was born in Scotland, came here at 19 years of age, met my father. They got married. They were married for 63 years or something, and they had a great marriage. It was very beautiful. But she was a very, very smart woman, and she was a very religious woman, actually.
Tell me, but we're talking about women. There's been a lot of confusion, controversy out on the trail. When I travel the country, people say, I'd like to vote for Donald Trump, but I don't think I could look my wife and my daughter in the eye if I did so. They're reacting to those Billy Bush comments and the reaction to some of these people who are accusing you across the country. What do you say to them?
Well, that never happened. Those were artificial. They were made up, just like at the rallies where they made up, they brought the protesters in, they paid them, they were thugs, and they paid them, I guess, $1,500 or something, and an iPhone. That was artificial and actually criminal what they did, and nobody understood it at the time. And it was put in there by the Clinton campaign. This stuff was all made up. And so I protested it, and actually witnesses have come forward, and much of it's already been debunked, but it was all made up.
What do you say to those who still have lingering concerns? Have you changed since those comments made
Well, it was locker room
ago?
talk. It was locker room talk. The microphones, to be honest, should never have been on, but that was locker room talk. And just one of those things. I have it, I've said it, I've made my apologies. But again, just one of those things.
I want to read something Newt Gingrich recently said about you. He said, he is a transformational figure, but one that reacts very intensely, almost uncontrollably, to anything that attacks his own sense of integrity. Do you regret some of the reactions you've made over this election season, and perhaps the way you phrased those reactions?
Well, I started with 17 people, and it was a very, very nasty primary, and they were nasty to me. People think I was nasty, but they were nasty to me, and I ended up winning, 1 in 17, and it was actually 18 if you want to be exact. And then I have the final now with Hillary Clinton, and I hear we're doing very well in the polls, and we're doing very well in Florida, which is up now. The reaction has been amazing. So we'll have to see what happens. But no, look, you can't go back. You have to look forward. This was a nasty campaign. And, people don't mention, but they were nasty to me. I think in many cases they were nastier to me than I was to them.
And as a president, you wouldn't react that way?
No, I don't think so. It depends. You react different way for different people. These were 17 people coming at me from every angle. And I hit them hard. Most of them are now endorsing me. Some of them dishonored the pledge. They signed a pledge and they dishonored the pledge, and they'll have to live with that. But most of them have endorsed me.
I want to get into some issues.
Okay.
You weren't always pro-life, but you now are determinedly and decidedly pro-life.
I am pro-life.
You said you're going to appoint judges who are pro-life.
Right.
You're very concerned about the late-term abortions. What was the moment that changed your thinking, your heart on this?
Well, there were a number of moments, but one was a couple that I know very, very well. And you had a strong pro-life and you had a strong pro-choice. And they argued over, the mother was pregnant. They argued over the child. One, I won't get into specifics, but one wanted to abort. And the other said, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. Anyway, they had the baby. It's a long time ago. And the baby is such a magnificent person who I know, a magnificent person. And the person that was actually pro-choice is now pro-life. because of it. And it had a big effect on me. But I've seen other examples similar to that, but I've seen other examples. So
it was a personal change.
It was a personal change. And, you know, Ronald Reagan made that personal change, too. Right. Many people have made the personal change. I mean, some make the personal change the other way also.
Right.
But I made the personal change, and I'm very happy with it.
Tell me about religious liberty. I know this has become a growing concern for you, particularly for so many faith-based voters and people who are in nonprofits, religious service people, whether it's the Little Sisters of the Poor or you know, these private businesses who are religiously motivated. They feel this Obamacare mandate, which demands contraceptive and abortifacient services as part of insurance, is intrusive. What would you do as president?
Well, let me tell you, religious liberty itself, take it in the biggest picture, is in tremendous trouble, okay? I mean, religious liberty in this country is in tremendous trouble.
You mean expression of religion?
I'm talking expression, and I'm talking anything else you want to talk about. People that are faith-based are not having, you know, they're just not having, they're not being accepted. It's almost like they're not being accepted in our country anymore. Obama has been a disaster in terms of religious liberty. And one of the things I'm very proud of, I was with pastors, ministers, priests, rabbis, on numerous occasions, large numbers. And at the first meeting, I could see I had tremendous support, like beyond. And I said, when are you going to endorse me? And they said, we can't do that. And I said, why can't you do that? They said, we're not allowed to do that. If we did that, we'd lose our tax-exempt status. And I said, why is that? And they told me about the Johnson Amendment, 1954. And I thought about it for a month, and we had a meeting again, 56 different pastors, ministers, etc. And I said, we're going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment because our pastors and ministers should have the right to go out and speak their minds. These are the people we respect. And they're actually precluded from speaking their mind. If they speak their mind, their whole tax-exempt status can be taken away.
From under the
So we're getting rid. And I think it's one of the most important things that I'll be doing for the evangelicals and for religion. So I think it's very, very important. So we're going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment.
And what about Obamacare? The administration admitted these premiums are going to go up 25% on average, could be 50% in some markets. Given that, and this religious objection to the Obamacare mandate, what are you going to do as president?
Obamacare is killing our country. It's killing our jobs. It's a disaster. I've been saying it for a long time. I've been talking about it for a long time, before it was even approved. Whether it's healthcare savings accounts, by the way, there are many things, but healthcare savings accounts are phenomenal. You have to break up the lines between the states so that we have competition. Once you create competition, those numbers will go so low, but you have to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's a disaster. And the number of 25%, Washington came out, say, I'm sorry to say your number's going up 25%. It's wrong. It's going up 50%, 60%, 70%, and next year it's going to go up again. It's going to get worse. And Hillary Clinton wants to keep Obamacare going, and people are going to be paying hundreds. I mean, when you really look at it, they'll be paying 150%. It doesn't work. It's no good on its face. It doesn't work. Never would have worked. Should have never been approved. It was approved by a lie. I mean, let's face it.
At the last presidential debate, Donald Trump was asked this question.
Do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
You mentioned Hillary Clinton. She is saying your unwillingness to accept the election results, which happened at the last debate, she says this poses a direct threat to our democracy. Does it?
Well, you know who said the same thing, and I won the last debate, according to everybody. I won it easily. But you know who it really said it pretty well was Obama. When he was running in his first election, they asked him the same question, and he talked about rigged elections and rigged everything else. Our system is rigged.
What do you mean when you say that specifically?
Whether it's through the
Not
media.
the electoral process.
Well, you know, Obama said it was. I mean, he said the electoral process is rigged. I mean, all you have to do is go back and look when he ran, when he first ran.
But are you worried about the counting of votes?
Well, if you look at research, certainly there's some of that going on. We can be babies and say it doesn't happen, but certainly if you look at Philadelphia, if you look at Chicago, if you look at St. Louis, if you look at Obama's statements from 8 years ago, take a look at his statements, what he said about it. I saw it last night. It was like incredible. He was far more outgoing as far as that's concerned than I am. But overall, what I'm really concerned about is the system is rigged, whether it's the media rigging the system. There's so many things wrong. Look, Hillary Clinton shouldn't be allowed to run. She lied. what she did with her emails, where she deleted 33,000 emails, she shouldn't even be allowed to run for the presidency. She gets a subpoena from the United States Congress, and she deletes her emails. Now, James Cartwright, General James Cartwright, may go to jail for 5 years because he lied to the FBI. She lied to the FBI probably hundreds of times. And she's allowed to do it, but a 4-star general is going to go to jail? She shouldn't even be allowed to run for the office of president.
You mentioned emails. These WikiLeaks revelations have offended a lot of evangelicals and Catholics.
Right.
Now, these were members of Hillary Clinton's staff, John Podesta, her communications director, and they said things like this. They suggested that they needed to plant seeds of rebellion in the Catholic Church to somehow change the teaching to accommodate their political agenda.
Sure.
They said it was a backward, middle-aged dictatorship. Now, that's her staff. Is she guilty of that? Should she apologize?
It's her. It's her. She should apologize. I think she has to do more than apologize. No, that's her thinking. That's her staff. Frankly, if any Catholic votes for Hillary Clinton, I would say if I were a Catholic, I wouldn't be talking to them anymore. She's been terrible in what she said and her thoughts toward Catholics and to evangelicals. She was mocking evangelicals also. So you'd say, why would an evangelical or a Catholic, and almost you could say anybody of faith, but in particular because they were mentioned, evangelicals and Catholics, why would they vote for Hillary Clinton, and how could they vote for Hillary Clinton? But that's her speaking, believe me.
Well, it's her staff. Do you think it reveals a mindset in the administration? Is that what you're
it's her
suggesting?
staff,
Or in her
but I
campaign,
think it's
rather?
her. Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a top person in her campaign. I think it reveals her, yes.
I want to talk personally about you. When you pray, what do you pray for?
I don't want to talk to you about that. I mean, I pray. It's very personal to me. I'm a person of belief, but I certainly, I pray for my family. I pray for our country, but I don't want to talk to you about that. I think that's very personal.
Okay, between you and God.
It is between me and God, yes.
You're a Presbyterian, so I don't want to drag you into other realms. Do you have a favorite saint?
Well, I think that if you look, Mother Teresa, who's probably our newest, is great. And
incredible.
John Paul, Pope John Paul, I thought was terrific.
Why?
Because it had something special, had a special something. There was a warmth, there was a toughness, but there was a warmth that was incredible. So I certainly think Pope John Paul.
No candidate since the advent of polling has come back this late in a race from a 5-point national deficit. How do you turn it around in these last days?
Well, number one, I don't believe there's a 5-point deficit.
You don't?
It was done by CNN, and it was, heavily skewed toward Democrats. I don't believe there's a 5-point deficit. And if you look at the polling booths in Florida right now, if you look at where they're voting, the voting booths, I think you're going to see record crowds. That's what you're seeing. It's only 2 days, but that's what you're seeing. And I think we're going to do really well.
You have said this is a movement. You're the leader of a movement. Whether you win or lose, what are the issues that this party, the GOP, will have to contend with as part of that movement?
There are many issues. The biggest issue right now is the judges, Supreme Court judges, but Obamacare is a massive issue. The Republicans have to get rid of it. They've been unsuccessful in doing it. I will get rid of it, and I'll replace it with something much better and much less expensive for the people. Jobs have to stop leaving our country. Our military has to be rebuilt, and we need it's been very depleted. The military has to be rebuilt. We have to take care of our vets. We have to protect our Second Amendment, which is under siege. And we have to have strong borders. Right now, people are pouring into our country. Drugs are pouring into our country. We have to stop the people and the drugs.
Now, Hillary Clinton says we need more of these Syrian refugees in. These people are suffering abroad. They need to come home, and they need to come here. And we as a country should be open to them. You would say what?
I would say she's crazy. I would say that it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. We have no idea. We're not vetting them properly. We have no idea. Are they ISIS? Are they not ISIS? Where are they coming from? Who they are? We're taking them in by the tens of thousands right now. And Hillary Clinton wants to upgrade that by 550%. I would say to you, it's crazy to be doing this, and I will stop it immediately. We will not have radical Islamic terrorists coming into our country, and some of them will be radical Islamic terrorists.
And then there is this. In appearance after appearance, there is one bit of Trump syntax that has created debate in households across America.
But we have to also get back, and we have to solve it big league and strongly. Someday, I believe that will be proven out big league.
We are all suffering, and we're suffering big league.
We're going to win big league, believe me.
Okay, my final question. It is perhaps the most portentous. We've been seeing on social media, we've been seeing it in the New York Times, in USA Today. Are you saying bigly or big league? And my guess is within, so there's money riding on this.
Well,
Bigly or big league?
now let me ask you, you're talking about for me?
When you're speaking on the podium and you say, this is...
I use big league.
I was
Good.
right.
Okay,
Big
good.
league, you've settled it.
Okay, thank you.
It should be said that we invited all the candidates running for president who are on the ballot in 50 states to join us. There is a standing invitation to Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Kaine, should their schedules allow. We've been in regular contact with their campaign. And let me know what you think of the Trump interview. I'm on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo, or you can email us worldover@EWTN.com. When we return, Matt Schlapp joins us for analysis of the interview with Trump and the direction of this election. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. Election Day is looming and the polls are tightening in key battleground states. Joining me to discuss the trends, the news from the trail, and the Trump interview is Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you again.
Hey, let's look at these polls for a minute. We see them tightening in Florida, North Carolina. They're moving up and down. Georgia seems to be tightening. Nevada. What do you see? I mean, you've been an old hand in a number of these campaigns.
That's right.
What's going on?
This race is going to naturally tighten because 70% of Americans think this country is on the wrong track, and it's very rare for one party to get 3 terms in a row. It's very tough for Hillary Clinton to make the case that we need more of these Obama policies, but so far, there's no question she's leading.
Yeah, and that's what she's doing. Now, my sense is that this race is really in the margin of error. That's
right.
where it's going to end up. So does it then just become a turnout game?
Yeah, very much so. And the other thing on polls that all your viewers need to know is that we've never seen an October like this in modern presidential campaigns. So much debris, clutter, noise, whatever you want to call it.
October.
You
How
pick
about
the euphemism.
September, June, January, July?
Worse in October.
Okay.
And that's when Americans really start paying attention. So the other thing on these polls, they're going to move around a little bit.
Yeah.
The fundamentals are the same, which is this is going to be a very close election. So turnout is going to matter. And these key battleground states, keep your eyes on them.
Okay. Now, Trump's national finance chairman said they are ceasing fundraising for the remainder of the campaign. Now, I know we only have a week and change, but Hillary Clinton has surrogates going out. They're hitting Hollywood. They're hitting Wall Street. You know, Michelle Obama's doing dinners for her and Katy Perry. They're raising money. Why is the Trump campaign closing up shop on the formal fundraising front, and what does that mean?
They're not, but this is they're still going to fundraise online. But what it's the biggest irony of this race, which is you have the billionaire who would rather hang out with the people and be at rallies talking to voters, and you have the liberal who is spending most of her time at country clubs talking to billionaires. And I actually think Donald Trump's doing the right thing. If he's going to win this race, it's not going to be because they upped their TV buys. It's going to be because he got to more cities and talked to more people and connected with him on his key messages.
There's a story today out of McAllen, Texas. It's a CBS story. And it's about illegal immigrants crashing the border, hundreds of them coming across in McAllen because they're being told, get into the country now, so if Hillary Clinton wins the White House, you might get amnesty.
That's right. Look, this is the moral hazard, and we saw this when Obama did similar things at the border. We are sending all the wrong messages, which those messages are not. It's awfully dangerous to take these long treks to come to America, and you ought to do it the legal way. The message Clinton and Obama are sending is do it the illegal way. If you do it the illegal way, you cut in line and eventually we'll give you amnesty. It's a shame for those people, and it's a shame for our country, and it's a shame for all those people who are waiting in long lines to become American citizens.
Has this election opened up fissures, in your opinion, in the GOP,
Yes.
in the conservative movement? How do you heal them?
Respect.
Can you?
Number one is respect. People are going to follow their conscience and vote as they are directed, which I applaud and I encourage people to do. And at the end, we're either going to win this race or we're going to lose this race. It's really not that complicated. Either Hillary Clinton is going to win or Donald Trump's going to win. If Donald Trump loses, let's not point fingers at each other. Let's start to immediately unite to fight these horribly, liberal, progressive, Obama-like policies that are going to come out of Hillary Clinton. She will not be a president that governs from the middle. She will be a president that governs much like Bernie Sanders would have governed. And I think it's time for all people of faith to get their eye on that ball.
Well, I have to take a little issue of what you said,
Sure.
because you were saying don't point fingers at one another. The finger pointing started when Trump won the primaries. I mean, it's really from that point on. You've got the Never Trump crowd saying, you people are to blame. The extreme right wing in the base of the party created this monster. Then, of course, you have the people in that base saying, no, you all wouldn't listen to these issues, so this was our only option. How do you get past that?
You get past it by listening to each other. I think a lot of people in the Republican Party think we were going to get past this discord out in the country by ignoring it. And they ignored it. And that discord resulted in millions of votes for Donald Trump, which they thought was a big statement against Washington, D.C. and Republican leaders. We are not going to be able to heal this if we ignore our divisions. We will be able to heal it if we start to change our act.
Donald Trump said this the other day. The people are very angry at the leadership of this party because in an election we will win 100% if we had support from the top. I think we're going to win it anyway, he said. He's clearly already trying to position this a bit, saying, wait a minute, the reason I'm a little behind is because the establishment, the GOP, won't support me.
This is something he's wrong about. I actually think it helps him when some of these old Republican leaders don't support Donald Trump. I think it makes the case that Donald Trump is so outside the system and the establishment that he's going to take on both parties if needed. He's going to upset a lot of people in Congress. So when Republicans are also uneasy with Donald Trump, it kind of reiterates to voters who want them to be uneasy because they want to see change.
And you think those issues he rattled off at the end of my interview there, I said, these are the issues. What are the issues that will go on whether you win or lose? Do you think the country and the party will have to grapple with that host of issues?
Yes, because in the end, this was never about Donald Trump. This was about Donald Trump being smart enough to listen to people, millions of people in the conservative movement and in the Republican Party who wanted the party to listen to them and how much pain they're in and how much pain their family's in.
Okay, I want to get into some of the things that we brought out in the interview or that he revealed in the interview. He talked about that rigged election question.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton saying he is a threat to the democracy. And Donald Trump seems to be not doubling down, tripling down. He said, yeah, it is rigged. Everything's rigged. I said, you don't mean the voter count, actually counting ballots. He said, yeah, I do believe that. Now, Matt Schlapp, you were down in Florida the last time they had all those hanging chads.
2000.
Your experience and research tells you what? Is there credibility in what Donald Trump's saying, or does he stretch it here?
Look, if an election is very close, it does come down to the subjective decision-making of office holders and volunteers in the election process. We have thousands of people who sit in jails because they voted fraudulently. This is a fact, and for us to ignore it is wrong. Everyone should vote who has a legal right to vote. I encourage them all to vote, but no one should vote if they don't have a legal right to vote. And I think focusing on that is important. Barack Obama made these charges against Hillary Clinton in 2008 by saying her people were suppressing his supporters. And he himself, as Donald Trump said in your interview, has raised concerns about our electoral process. But when a Republican or a conservative does it, there's something untoward about it.
What do you make about the Catholic emails, those mocking Catholic emails that came out in the Podesta dump? And it was the communications director of the Clinton campaign, Jennifer Palmieri, as well as Podesta and some of his supporters and activists, making very disparaging comments about Catholics, evangelicals. Now, Donald Trump went a step further. He said, it's not only the staff, it's her.
That's right.
It's her. And he said, that's enough that no Catholic or evangelical should vote for her. Does he go too far?
I've watched Hillary Clinton both as a Hill staffer and as a staffer for President George W. Bush. I've seen her in public office. Please name for me the issue that Catholics care about that she has championed. I can't think of one. Whether or not she's hostile with her words, she's definitely hostile with her policies and her practices and her speeches, what she's done on the global stage. She has a disdain for people who have a traditional view of families and values, and I think that comes out in the words of her staffers when the cameras are off and the doors are closed and they think they're in private. They let their bigotry all hang out.
The other lingering issue, it seems to me, hanging over this election, and as I travel the country, I hear it over and over again, and I brought it to Donald Trump's attention. I have men and women who say, I cannot vote for him and look my daughter or my wife or my mother in the eye. I can't do it. Did he sufficiently answer that question there? And as time goes on and we move away from the Billy Bush bus comments, does that create the space that allows them to return to him on other issues?
I have this conversation with people all the time, too. Sometimes it's conservatives and people of faith
saying, it's a lot of conservatives.
Can I stand with this man when I have these concerns? And I often say, you know, a lot of people are going to be 60% for Trump. They're not 100% for Trump, but they're 60% for Trump. And when it comes to his words that have been harmful and hurtful and for his transgressions, yes, I'd like him to take that extra step and say, look, I've done wrong, but I've lived a big, full life. And as a 70-year-old man, I'm looking at Barack Obama destroy our country. And I think Hillary Clinton will just fulfill those policies. I know that I've not been perfect, but you can trust me. And what I tell you, I will do. And that's what I think you ought to keep saying.
I want to step back for a moment and talk about the role of the bishops this election season. They
have been infiltrated, as you pointed out, which is very interesting. These groups have literally been meeting with these bishops throughout the last year and the year before to try to sell them on the idea that somehow this Clinton progressive...
you mean those organizations that Podesta helped incubate?
And George Soros helped fund, that I don't think faith ever even enters the mind of these people.
Do you think the bishops have been clear in their teaching, particularly vis-a-vis the vote and how people should be morally formed as they go into the ballot box?
I think our bishops are as conflicted as so many voters by what they have in this election cycle. And I think as we get closer to Election Day, what I'm seeing is more and more bishops realizing, because of all that clutter and noise we talked about in the polls, all these things they see on television, they're realizing, what does it come down to? It comes down to a court, which is 4-4. And do we tip it in favor of the First Amendment and our religious freedoms? Do we tip it for our Bill of Rights and the idea that it's okay to have restrictions on abortion? And how about this? Is it okay to say that our taxpayer dollars shouldn't go to fund abortions? These are the questions that the court may decide. It's a jump ball, Raymond. Who's going to make that 9th pick, which will determine these majorities?
What does your gut tell you as you go into this final march? We only have a week.
That for the first time in a very long time, a Republican who would be down a couple of points could win. Why? Because the enthusiasm is all on Donald Trump's side, all of it. Second of all, there is this quiet Trump support for people who are worried about the moral judgment from folks who say you can't support him, ... They are going to be with Donald Trump. They're not going to tell pollsters. They're not going to tell the people in their lives. When they go into the secrecy of that polling booth, they're going to flick that lever. I had a never Trump lawyer who's very public call me the other day and was going through it, and he said, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what I've said, and that polling booth, that curtain closes, I'll probably vote for Donald Trump because at the end of the day, she's repugnant to me. And even these never Trump people will realize the moral questions at stake when it comes to Election Day.
Very interesting. We shall see. I got to tell you, watching him at Doral and seeing a few of his other campaign events, and I've seen only one of the Hillary events live, there is a palpable excitement that he generates, and the crowds are enormous. I mean, they're immense compared to at least the Hillary Clinton event I was at here in Virginia. It was not a big event. It was a pretty subdued one at a high school. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the days ahead.
Yeah, I mean, enthusiasm at these Hillary Clinton stops, they're not there. And, you know, she's a logical choice to a lot of people, but she's not the choice of anyone's heart. And Donald Trump, let's face it, he's imperfect, but people like the authenticity and they like the leadership.
So, final question, and it's the final one I asked Donald Trump. You were surprised that it was big league. You thought it was big league.
No, that's untrue.
Oh, you did?
I knew it was. I thought it sounded like big league.
Well,
but I knew
because
that
of Jimmy Fallon.
Yes, that he likes to say big league. Now, you know, whether that comes from polling or the man's own head, I'm going with the latter.
Yeah, exactly. No, very New York.
Right.
Matt Schlapp, thanks for being here. When we return, the anticipated liberation of Mosul from ISIS is underway. What are the hopes and fears of the Christians living there? Father Benedict Kiely joins us to discuss When the World Over continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest has been speaking out on the plight of Christians in Iraq and Syria for many years. With the anticipated liberation of Mosul from the grips of ISIS, there are new hopes and fears among the people living in Iraq, especially Christians and religious minorities. Joining me to discuss the situation on the ground is Father Benedict Kiely. He's the founder of Nazarene.org. Father,
Thank you,
great to have
Raymond.
you back. I want to start with 2 years ago. ISIS came in, expelled so many of the indigenous people from these territories, 125,000 Christians and Yazidis and religious minorities. What do they come back to? Are there enough of them to come back?
A very good question, Raymond. Before I answer it, though, I'd like to thank you especially because you've been a real champion for these people over the last several years. You've highlighted them when so much of the mainstream media has forgotten them. So they thank you.
Thank you.
What do they go back to? They go back to, I saw today pictures of the town of Karakosh, which was the largest Christian town in Iraq, destroyed. They go back to lack of trust. One priest said to me, "My house was taken by my neighbors. My 800-year-old church is an ISIS torture center." He said, "How can we live with these people?" So they go back to lack of trust. They go back to a fear of governance. And most of all, who will protect them?
Well, that's the question. Is the government able to protect them? I talk to Iraqis on the ground. They tell me, well, yeah, we're worried about these Islamic radicals, but the government's not much better.
They don't trust the government. They don't trust the government in Baghdad. They don't trust the Kurdish government for one simple reason, because they ran away. They basically say that if they ran away once, why won't they run away again? There is no trust. Priest after priest, nun after nun, layperson after layperson said to me, "We have no trust."
Now, what do Christians tell you when you're on the ground? I mean, you've visited them in the refugee camps, on the outskirts of cities like Mosul. What are they telling you? Do they want to go home, or are they have they had it?
Just under 2 years ago, when I went in May 2015, about 80% said they wanted to go home. There was optimism, there was a real feeling that we'll be back. When I went in January of this year, it was down to about 50%. This time, I'm afraid it's 80% want to leave. There's a tiredness. Even one of the wonderful nuns, the Dominican nuns who were driven out by ISIS, one of the nuns just with a tired face said to me, we want to live in peace, and they have no hope of living in peace. Most of them, even though the hierarchy of the church is against it, most of the Christians want to leave.
Wow. I mean, people don't understand. For generations, indeed centuries, Catholics and Christians and Yazidis and Muslims lived side by side as neighbors. And a priest told me recently at an event, he said, you wake up one afternoon, and these people that you've broken bread with, you've picked their children up out of the street, you've helped their family, suddenly they're turning you into ISIS. They're breaking through the door with ISIS forces. Can the trust ever be repaired again? That's the big question.
It's the big question, and it's very hard to answer. One person said to me, and I can only report what I heard, I wanted to listen more than anything else. Ask questions, but listen. Because so often we go in with a prejudiced view. We think we have the answers. One person said to me, and it may be sounding intolerant, but they said inside every Sunni is a little ISIS, little tiny piece of ISIS. In other words, they really don't want Christians around, even though Christians have been there from the beginning. Disciples of Christ founded the church in Iraq. So that doesn't sound good, it sounds a little prejudiced, but there are many good Muslims helping, but there's that great fear. ISIS is like a snake. When ISIS goes, some of our viewers and listeners might think, well, Mosul's going to be liberated, Christians can go home. when the head of ISIS is cut off, just like a snake, another thing will appear with another name.
Well, that's why I think trying to battle this only with the military force, this is a losing game. You take the ground, you lose the ground. You take the ground, you lose the ground. It's not like the animus and the ideology and the hatred driving this movement will dissipate. It remains. That has to be dealt with. Why isn't there some attempt to deal with it on both a spiritual and a practical level?
I think it's because the Middle East now is such a cauldron. The Baghdad government is effectively not in charge. You know, we're dealing with, as one Iraqi Christian said to me, we're dealing with a Shia-Sunni civil war between Iraq, between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and as always, the Christians, the Yazidis, the Shabak, the religious minorities are in the middle with no one to protect them. And it's important for the viewers and listeners to know it's not just the Christians. The Yazidis and the Shabak who are Muslim, they say the same thing. They say, no one will defend us, no one will protect us. And the worst thing of all, Raymond, I have to say, is the shock and horror that they perceive. Why will America, why will Britain, why will Europe not help Christians? Right. Is there a prejudice against Christians? It was very embarrassing to have to try and answer that.
I want to play you something, and the viewers. This is the Chaldean patriarch, Luis Rafael Sacco, and he's speaking in Arabic. I'll translate. He says here, the Iraqi forces liberated this land. Before there were Christians, before there were Muslims, there was the holy soil of Iraq. We are proud of the achieved victory. There is some damage in the church, but damages can be repaired. I encourage all people to return to their homes and villages. Is this possible?
You're asking the very difficult question because one fully understands the patriarch, the hierarchy. There's that horror of Christianity disappearing from the Middle East. And it was there long before Islam. However, people said to me, a man said to me, he said, I want my children to grow up in peace. One priest said to me, he asked the same question, he said, people are more important than the land. People are even more important than the churches. We can keep our faith. Look at Detroit in the USA, strong Chaldean Syriac Catholic community. So one understands why the patriarch is saying this sort of thing, but I have to say on the ground, there are a lot of people who don't really agree with that.
Yeah. Is there a post-liberation plan in place?
No, and that's the crucial point. 6 weeks ago when I was there, right before this was imminent, people were saying, no, there's no plan, and perhaps the assault has been launched with a view to a certain person's legacy. Certain person not far from us here, that it'll be important to say the liberation of Mosul took place. There's no plan. There's no plan for a post-Mosul liberation.
And of course the refugee situation is only likely to increase in Europe as well as the United States.
The potential is that 1 million Sunnis will pour out of Mosul into the empty Christian villages, which will mean the Christians will never go back. So without being a conspiracy theorist, it's very easy to see a possible conspiracy that the Christians will never be able to go home.
How much do you blame American policy and the first incursion into Iraq for what we're seeing today?
As with many people, I thought the Iraq war was right. I know you didn't.
I didn't.
But no, it's very clear that it was a Pandora's box. It uncorked something which is impossible to put back together again now. I don't believe, actually, there can be such a place as a unified Iraq or Syria.
Well, so sad. I mean, the suffering is so intense. The heartbreak of the people when you talk to them, and you have, is profound. It's their land.
But we can still do something, Raymond. We can help them. We can still support them. We can give jobs. That's one of the most important things now, is to provide work. So we don't just give handouts to people. We give them some dignity. And people can help by going to Nazarean.org, Nasarean.org. That's Father Kiely's great enterprise that helps both the Iraq and Syrian Christians who are suffering and living under intolerable circumstances. Father, thank you so much for being here and for all you do. Well, that is all the time we have for now. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Now, be sure to join us next week. One of my favorites, actor and director Mel Gibson, joins me in an exclusive to discuss his new film, Hacksaw Ridge. And an exorcist tells us why his services are needed now more than ever. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen
and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.